Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del challenges the status quo, questions everything, and empowers you to return to your core beliefs to make your life better. If you're ready to hear the truth and get your roadmap to the lifestyle you really want, the next hour will change your life. And now, your host, self-made millionaire, national award-winning investor of the year, CEO and founder of Lifestyles Unlimited, Del Walmsley.
Welcome to the Del Walmsley Radio Show, where the hype ends and the help begins. I'm your host, Del Walmsley, and as always, we're working on your financial freedom. Today, my friends, we have quite the treat for you. We're going to let you have an insight into one of the most successful real estate investors in the lifestyles history, and we're going to show you the difference between how a beginner mindset drives your investing to a successful, long-term, mature investor, the way they think and how they see the world. So here today to help us out is one of the most successful real estate investors in lifestyles history, Mr. Curtis Haynes. Welcome to the show, Curtis.
Hey, Del. Happy to be here.
Great to have you with us, Curtis. Just for everybody out there to understand, Curtis has been here about 8 years, has done over 50 transactions, and is looking at he's purchased 35 acquisitions, sold 4 of those, and now currently has about $600 million worth of real estate with about 7,400 units. Now, Curtis, that's way in excess of anything I ever did. And I want to talk today with you and let you take over this conversation today about the mental approach that you took from the beginning and what you see is important throughout this process. Now, I'm going to start the conversation off with the infinitesimal and very infant type conversation that I had with myself when I was starting, which was, hey, Del, we need money to survive. Let's go buy properties and have cash flow. So when I started the process, Curtis, I was thinking income statement. How much income in? What expenses do I have to cover? Can I survive? It was all income statement, income statement. I think most people out there today live on an income statement basis. They're worried about, hey, what do I earn? And what can I spend with that? And what can I survive on? And so we set up our life looking at the income statement every month, paying the bills, looking what the paycheck brings in, paying the bills, and trying to just survive and get by. But you're an advocate of something completely different. You're an advocate of the balance sheet. Now, before I let you take over in the conversation with that, I remember back when I first started trying to be self-employed, I remember taking out a piece of paper every month and adding up what my income was. And then I would take it and I'd add it up for this month. Then I'd annualize that and see what it would come out annually. And I would look at what I had total for the year, and I'd look at what my annualized projection was, and I would continue to do that every month. And I had this sheet of paper, just a stupid sheet of paper. I kept that transaction on, but my goal was to make my annualization number larger than my actual number and continue to grow that annualization number. And the whole focus was on income. How do I increase my income and push that income growth? Now, today, you're going to have a conversation about looking at what your assets are adding up to and what your net worth is adding up to. Something I never really even paid much attention to be honest with you, at the beginning, because I was worried about feeding myself and taking care of my bills. So why don't you take over from here and express to these people, maybe they're starting in a different place. Maybe you started in a different place than I did. Maybe it wasn't a struggle in the beginning for you just to survive. So you started out from a different point. Also, Curtis's accounting background, as I do. And so talk about where your mindset was when you came in and how you brought yourself to where you are today. Curtis, go ahead and take it over.
Thanks, Del. Yeah, it's a lot of good intro there. So for me, starting off, this shift to the balance sheet, what we're going to talk about a little bit later, really didn't happen till about 6-9 months ago, and the light really came on in my mind, and I got really, really excited about this new concept of focusing on the assets. But I think at the end of the day, it still gets you to the same conversation that you and I had when we first joined Lifestyles, and when you first got into real estate, was trying to get enough income to pay our expenses. And the funny thing is, with just like most people out there, it really doesn't matter how much money you make. We all are guilty of living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, I started off in accounting. I had a pretty steady paycheck. I think it was somewhere in that $27,000 a year time frame. And I remember struggling to pay my bills. And then I moved into sales in my career, where really I had a chance to make a lot more money. And my first year, I think I still was around $30,000 a year and living paycheck to paycheck. But within about a 18-month, 2-year time frame, I was in the $200,000 a year W-2 paycheck because I was just really kicking butt in sales. Well, the funny thing was, I was still living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, I may have had the only real thing that changed is maybe I had a bigger house and maybe I had a nicer car, but I still was scraping by paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay off my expenses, my living expenses. And I, was in sales for 18 years, and I had my own company, eventually got my own company and started hiring salespeople and training salespeople and overseeing a lot of very successful high-income earners in sales, and they were doing the same thing. It's just a very common, normal human thing to just, no matter how much you're making, whether it's $25,000 a year or whether it's $100,000 a year, is we just get consumed with this idea of buying things that we can't afford. It's just normal. I got to make more money, go get a bigger house. Make more money, go get a better car. Make more money, go get expensive jewelry, nicer watches, nicer clothes. And so what ends up happening is, before we know it, we start creeping into our retirement years and realize that we never really thought through all this. We've consumed our entire life, and if we're not careful, we're going to be hitting retirement and saying, crap, I don't have enough money to retire. I may have to work another 5, 10, 15 years. And that's really what I want to get across to everybody on this new concept is, which again, it goes back to the original thinking, Del, that you did and that I did when I joined, is having a stream of income that can give me a little bit more freedom, or be a supplement to the W-2 income, or actually be able to replace my W-2 income and give me the freedom to do what I want to do, whether that is to buy a nicer house or to have a little more vacation time, but not be locked in this normal day-to-day grind of just keep on making money and keep on spending money.
So, Curtis, when did it start clicking to you, and what brought it about to you that you should look at the balance sheet instead of just the income statement?
Yeah, and you introduced the concept of this in the 2-day, which really didn't hit with me until later, and that was the simple conversation of what's your return on your net worth. And for most folks, that's just simply taking your passive income that, whether you're sick or not working, it's income that you're making regardless of what you do. It's just passive income. You divide that by your total assets, your total net worth. And typically for all of us starting off, it was less than 1%. I mean, we just never really had any kind of passive stream of income. And that passive stream of income is coming off of the assets. And so what I've been talking about so far is we are all programmed to work very, very hard our entire life to buy assets we can't afford. That's just who we are. We're a consumer nation, buying assets that we can't afford, working very hard to do that. And this concept of focusing on the balance sheet is let's change our way of thinking, and let's go out and buy assets that work hard for us. Let's go out and buy assets that work hard for us, assets that generate passive streams of income. And there's lots of assets out there to choose from, lots of asset classes. It just so happens that I believe, you believe, real estate is that best asset class. And within real estate, multifamily and single family as the best alternative, in my humble opinion and what I've seen, to be able to generate those kinds of passive streams of income. So what really opened my eyes was when I had a meeting with a very, very high net worth family member who was a second or third generation high net worth family, and they introduced me to the concept of the family office, which is just simply a business that focuses on the assets of the family, and the main focus of the assets of that business is
Curtis, I'm going to cut you off right there because this is a great discussion. I don't want you to get pushed off the back of the radio show. We'll be right back with Curtis Haynes and the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
Listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes. Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time. Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to Del Walmsley Radio Show. With me today here is Curtis Haynes, one of the mentors out of the Houston market. And Curtis is probably one of the top 3, if not top investors we've had at Lifestyles. Currently with about 7,400 units. He's been doing this for about 8 years, and he has quite the insight because he's owned businesses himself, because he's been in accounting, and because he has just really outdone most of us as far as the amount of accomplishments he's made in a short period of time. So, Curtis, before we went to break, you were talking about the family office. Pick that up from the beginning, because I knew it was going to get cut off right in the middle of it. Pick that up again, if you would.
Yeah, so I met with a high net worth family that had a family office, and we spent a whole other radio show really diving into that. So I just really want to give a brush overview. The office basically is a business, and the sole function, purpose of that business is to fully utilize the family's assets. And the way they benchmark their business is not on how much income that business generates. The way the family office benchmarks their business is the return on their assets. So at that stage of wealth, they're not tracking income. It's not important because they are making more income than they know what to do with. It's not about income. It's about return on their net worth, or the return on their assets, and that's how they're getting graded. And that really opened my eyes because it's really a subtle distinction. It's something that I can take, you can take, that the average Joe can take all the way down to where they're at. And yes, when we're starting off in real estate and trying to replace our W-2 income, our focus has to be on our income. It has to be on trying to get enough passive income to replace our W-2. But once you hit that level is where I really want everyone to kind of start shifting the focus on the actual return on asset instead of focus on the balance sheet instead of the income. Because here's the subtle difference, Del. When we are sitting back and looking, and when I was tracking the income that I was making off of real estate, I was doing the same thing you were doing. I was tracking that year after year and getting really, really excited. It was my third acquisition when I finally replaced my W-2 check, which was a big W-2 check because I had my own business, but it was really cool to see that. And so I was tracking my income. But what I didn't see was the actual return on my assets. And if I'd looked closely at that, what I would found is that what I thought was I was getting a great cash-on-cash return, like 10, 15% cash-on-cash return on my assets. I was only getting like a 3% return on my equity. And simply stated, there was a lot of built-up equity gains because the asset grew in value, that if I were to sell that and take all that cash, it's like I'm taking all that cash and putting it into a 3% CD. That's that subtle difference. So we can get really comfortable with the passive stream of income test and hit my goal. But then if we really just peel back one extra layer and say, wow, if I focus on my assets, focus on my balance sheet, and really see and judge and track my return on equity, it'll give me a better insight on how I can keep on redeploying the unrealized equity gains and building up that momentum even faster.
So, Curtis, as we go through this conversation, I would think back to myself along the way, and especially think about the people that I've mentored over 25 years, and that is what most people believe is that they actually have a better rate of return as they pay off their debt. As they get their debt out of the way, they make more money. And so they make more money, they think they're doing better. And yet we both know from the mathematics behind it that that's absolutely not true. But yet there's this comfort zone of having stuff paid off. How do you address that?
Yeah, I tell you, I was one of those that raised my hand when you asked who paid off your house mortgage, and I was so proud of that, cutting that check and making that last mortgage payment, because that's what we grew up with. We grew up with loans are bad. It's good. You're a good American if you pay off all your debt, right? That's what we grew up with, and so we all have this risk adverse to debt, and understanding that there's this difference between good debt that is used to buy assets that generate passive streams of income, and this other not so good debt, assets that we can't, buying assets that we can't afford, that are not generating passive streams of income. So when people start to realize that there's certain types of debt that's good, I think that helps ease their mind, that risk tolerance they have towards getting more loans. And the funny thing within real estate, it's pretty unique than any other business. It's really easy to get a loan on real estate compared to trying to get a loan on another business. And so not only is it enhances your returns, and because it's self-collateralized, it's lower risk, and it's also easier to get. So hopefully when they, and it's not something I don't think that you'll get, listeners will get today, but I think as they start diving into the world of real estate, and hopefully join us at Case Study next week and see some of the families' lives change by doing what we're talking about, they'll get a little bit more comfortable with that, the concept of adding more debt and leveraging to buy more assets that produce income.
Well, when you look at this thing, Curtis, there's this balance. And we talk about the people at the beginning, they're worried about the income, right? Then there's different levels of satiation of that income need. I remember when I just covered my paycheck, and which was about $70,000 a year, but my take-home pay was $40. So when I first made $40, that was like covering everything I took home from my paycheck. I was like, wow, I'm happy. Then when I made $100,000 a year in real estate, which is really like making $140 probably, I was like, wow, this is more money than I ever dreamed I would ever make. And so I was satiated again. And at different levels along the way, I just completely shut down. I didn't care anymore. It just didn't mean anything to me anymore how much money I made, because I was making way more than I'd ever dreamed possible or ever dreamed necessary to make. And so at each of those levels, what I found myself doing, and I'm going to have you address this when we come back from a break, because I want you to think about it for a second to come up with it. At each of those levels, I had to play a game with myself, literally had to play a psychological game. Now, think about it. We're both intelligent people, accounting backgrounds for both of us. We understand the basic logic here. But why did I have to play games with myself to get myself to go back out and invest again? In other words, I've got as much as I need, I think. My brain's satiated. My goals are satiated. And money's piling up in the bank. It's just sitting there. And yet I've got to play a game in my brain to get myself to go out and take advantage of that money and get it out there into the marketplace, where you're saying these people had to account a different way. We take a short break. We'll be right back with the answer to that with Curtis Haynes and the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
You're listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes. Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. With me here today is Curtis Haynes, the multifamily mentor out of the Houston market and one of the top real estate investors in Houston, or in lifestyles history over the last 27 and a half years. Curtis, as we went to break, I had asked you a question about how did you and how do others overcome the little stair steps of satiation in your life where you say, wow, that's more than I've ever thought I'd have. And there you are making more income than you really feel like you need, and money starts to pile up in the bank. And the money feels very safe piling up in the bank. I mean, quite honestly, we all know that having a lot of money in the bank feels really good, really safe. And especially when you have enough income that you don't really want or desire more income. Now, everybody wants more, don't get me wrong, but the balance in your mind is you don't need it. You're not killing for it. And so the safety / okay, I can do nothing and keep being safe balance compared to, oh my gosh, I need to go out and take risk again, do it one more time. How do you overcome that? What kind of games do people play to overcome that mentally? Or did you just logically work your way through it, just analytically pushed yourself?
I mean, I think a lot of us are hardwired a little bit differently when hitting something like that. And, you know, for me, for folks that don't know you well, they won't realize how much you care about others. And so you're hardwired to really give back and help others as much as possible. And I think part of the games that you play with yourself and pushing yourself, I think ultimately is in back of your mind, and in my opinion, there to help others. And for me, when I hit that first step on my third acquisition, you know, why didn't I stop there? For me, at that point in time, thinking back, it was more of just I was just having too much fun. The actual day-to-day, quote-unquote, work that I was doing in the side real estate was just so fulfilling, because not only was it impacting my life and my family's life, but it was impacting lots of my investors and other friends and family's lives as well. We were all in this together. Like, it's not a solo endeavor. It's a team sport, and there's so many people within lifestyles that are around you each and every day that benefit from what you're doing. So I think that enjoyment is what probably kept me going each time I hit that stair step, and really just that enjoyment of seeing others succeed as much as I'm succeeding. And then, of course, eventually getting to the point where you can do what you want to do. And for me, and I know for you too, Del, it's I enjoy helping others, and that's why I stepped up into the mentor role, is because I had the time, I had the freedom, because of those income steps, to be able to give back more and more. So for me, that's kind of my path through those different hurdles.
Well, that's a good point, and that's pretty insightful of you. I have purchased a lot of things simply so I could keep up with everybody else, so that I can continue to be able to teach it. If you can't do it, it's really hard to teach it, you know. And I found myself in situations where people were growing so fast. I was going, boy, the material's getting out in front of me. I better keep up with the material just to be able to teach it.
Yeah, and that's why I really want to scream out to everybody today is that, you know, I was putting together some material for orientation, and I came across some facts. And this is really, you know, from the standpoint of why I wanted to talk about this and what scares me for others and wanting to help others is a couple of facts I want to share. And I think you've heard this one before, but that the average person in the U.S. has $95,766 in savings when they retire. The median savings for retirement is only $5,000. So in other words, half the population will have less than $5,000 in their savings when they retire. And that, to me, is absolutely ridiculous. And if we don't change what we're doing today, we're going to end up there. And the only way to offset that is to work an extra 5, 10, or 15 years. And I just want people to start thinking about it today and realize that it's not about how much income you're making today. It's not about how big of a property you can buy. It's about starting that mindset. Go out and buy one single-family rental and start that process. And that's what I want to encourage encourage everybody to do and talk about a real simple, basic concept of your personal financial statement. Because we talk about, we're talking about assets, we're talking about net worth, and we're talking about me being an advocate for the balance sheet. Let's get nitty gritty and help folks out there and say, okay, what I want everybody to do that's listening on the radio is I want you to put together your personal financial statement. And it's simply a list of your assets, like your house, your car, your cash, stocks, jewelry, all your assets, and then a list of your liabilities, your mortgage, your car loan, your credit card balances. Add the two up, and the difference is your net worth. And say, okay, I got a net worth of $50,000. I got a net worth of $100,000. Start there, because what I don't want folks to be is in a place where they're 55, 60, and they're staring at a savings account that cannot support their cost of living. And I think that's what we want. I know that's what you want with doing with passive streams of income. That's what I want. I want people to wake up.
Curtis, it's interesting because I just thought of something while you were saying that, and that's that they're going to run into it eventually. Just because they put it off and stick their head in the sand right now, it's going to happen to them. I was at the gym the other day riding the bike, and I had been ill for about a week, and so I didn't have the energy to lift weights, so I just rode the bike. And I sat there and I listened to two guys that had to be between 65 and 75 years old, somewhere in that range. I don't know exactly how old. But I listened to these two guys talking about how they had intend to retire. And one guy had the plan. He says, well, my plan is I'm just going to keep working as long as I possibly can and take Social Security at the latest possible date. That way I'll get the most that Social Security will pay me. And the other guy had a slightly different plan. He goes, well, I'm going to quit while I can get a payout from my company. I'm going to let them buy me out now, and then I'll have a little bit of money, and I'll start taking Social Security later so that I'll get more. But that was their plan. How early or how late do I take Social Security is the difference between making $1,500 to $2,500 a month in Social Security. Whether or not they're going to work to continue to work to survive because that's all they have, or whether or not they're going to actually take a buyout to get out of there. I mean, when I sat and thought about that, it was really, I knew that there's a radio show in there somewhere. I didn't know really where to put it, but I think you've coined it. It's like you're going to run into that decision somewhere in your life, whether it's you think about it now while there's still time to fix it, or whether you put it off into the future until you get to the end of the road, go, man, I don't have a lot of choices left at this point in my life. And I see a lot of people in that situation. When you talk to people as a mentor and they're coming in, what's the average age that you're getting people coming in starting in this thing now? Any idea?
Wow. Yeah, I don't know the average age. I know that it's across the board. We have folks that are in their mid-20s, and we have folks that are in their early 60s, so it's across the board. I don't know what the average would be on that. But I tell you, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's not too late. It's definitely not too late to start. And no matter how young you are, it's not too early to start when it comes to this.
Well, it can't be too late because it's the rest of your life. It's the only choice you have. The older you get, the less choices you leave yourself. And one of the most interesting choices that I saw was a guy came in that was like 71, 72 years old. A couple months back, I think you might have even been there when we signed him up. And I said, why are you doing this? If you're 71 years old, you got a couple $1 million in the bank. He goes, because I want to teach my kids how to be entrepreneurs. And so I'm joining up and I'm learning this business with my grandkids to teach them how to do this. I thought that was an interesting concept, that he was going to get out in front of that early on with his grandkids, even though he had already made it himself. So there's a lot of reasons to get in front of this stuff. At whatever age you are, you need to get out there and get into it one way or another.
Now, from the files of Del Walmsley.
First segment of my life got me away from controlling, manipulative people telling me that I have to be as messed up as they are in life. That was my parents. And so I learned you do not have to be controlled and manipulated. And number two, you don't have to be as messed up as the people around you. You don't have to believe the lies that they live in their life every day. You can live a different way, even though they tell you it's the only way to live. I found out you don't have to be fat. You don't have to be physically out of shape, and you don't have to let people push you around and berate you and make you feel terrible about yourself. You can fix all of those things. So I learned to take physical control of my life, self-control of my mental ability to say, in which I use it even to this day, willpower. Say I'm going to stop eating and I'm going to stop drinking and I'm going to start exercising, and realize that you don't need all that stuff. You think you need it. It's really an addiction. Food is an addiction. Alcohol is an addiction. Spousal acceptance is an addiction. Many people just do whatever their spouse tells them to do, and you find you waste hours and hours and hours a day not getting anything done that you need to get done because you're doing the minutia of life that people want you to put into your life. And I found I didn't have to do that.
We'll be right back with Curtis Haynes and the Del Walmsley Radio Show.
You're listening to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. Del will be right back with more life-changing principles in just a few minutes. Welcome back. Now here's some more unconventional wisdom to set you free from the man on a mission to retire America, one person at a time, Del Walmsley.
Welcome back to the Del Walmsley Radio Show. With me here today is Curtis Haynes, multifamily mentor out of Houston, Texas. And Curtis, today you want to get people started taking action. Why don't you outline for them a couple steps that they should take and some ideas that should go behind those steps as to getting in line mentally with what you're trying to teach them?
Thanks, Del. I'm glad you bring that up. I would say step number one is go create your personal financial statement. You can go out and Google and download a personal financial statement. It's fairly simple to fill out. If you don't want to go that far, just list out your assets and list out your liabilities, and take a look at your net worth today. And that's the first step I want someone to do, is take a look at their net worth today. And then secondly, once you've done that, I want you to look for assets that have unrealized equity in there that you could potentially use and use to buy a property. Go buy a passive income producing property. So number two is, when you look at your personal financial statement, look for assets that you can use to deploy. And so think about your assets as a resource, and your focus should be, how can I get those assets working for me, as opposed to me going out and working hard to buy assets I can't afford. How can I get these assets here working for me? And then finally, track it and be honest with somebody about it. Say, hey, I just did this return on my net worth, and it's 0.00001. That's literally what mine was when I started out. I had no real estate experience. I had no assets, and stepped into the world of real estate, and thanks to you, Del, and all the support and help within Lifestyles, helped me get to where I'm at today. And so I would say the last step is come out and join us and see what it's really like for some families that have experienced this, that have bought their first property, and to see the look in their eyes, the stories they have. So step one, create your personal financial statement. Step two, figure out how much you can deploy to get working for you. Step three, tell a friend about it so they can hold you to be a little more accountable, and then finally come out and join us.
Curtis, you spoke earlier about the family being accountable for their balance sheet and the rate of return on assets. Do you remember who it is who held who accountable for that?
Yeah, the family itself. So it would be the families going back and looking at the business itself. So it would be the CIO, CFO, CEO of that family office. And so for me, it would be myself. Like I don't have a staff of people to work on my family's assets. It's just me. And that's where I'm glad you asked that. For other people, someone in the family should declare themselves as the CEO, and that person be held accountable to generate those returns.
Well, the reason I ask is because I've found that there is a phenomenon that I've noticed for 27 years of consulting people, and that is, in most families, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand has. In other words, I found even husband and wives don't talk about the money they have. They definitely don't talk to their kids about how much money they have or where they have it or what they do with it. It's almost like it's taboo. And so I wondered, who does keep you accountable? Where in your family do you have that opportunity? Now, I'll tell you a story before you answer the question. Is that when I first started dating Melissa, I took her and her kids to my CPA's office to do my tax return and had my CPA explain to Melissa and her kid where and how I made my money. Now, you could say, well, that's bragging. No, it was really, I simply wanted them to understand that the way I make money is completely different than the way that child's father did, the way she had her whole life. And that it was something that they needed to understand is what I'm trying to get to. Have you ever had that situation where you run into people that won't talk about money?
Yeah, and I think that is the normal kind of reaction is like, oh, I don't share my W-2 because that's what we were taught to not share W-2 with other employees. And so that is a normal reaction. Once you really start interacting with folks, like-minded individuals, it becomes easier and easier to share your W-2, your income, to share your net worth. And I think, the really, really cool thing, Del, about that is we're seeing lots of families tackle real estate together, from husband and wife to even 13-year-olds getting involved into the real estate. So it's making it a family affair, which is really cool to see that happening live at Lifestyles.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I feel let down about is that I never got my family involved in the actual real estate. Now, my fiance, she was in the business for 25 years, a different thing, but my daughter never really got interested in it. And, I didn't bring her into the business. So that's a mistake on my part. I see a lot of people now are doing that. And a lot of kids really get into it. That's what's interesting is how many children actually enjoy this stuff. I've seen some people do some strange things, like the other day somebody said they took their child out and bought their child the first house. This is the ladies out of South Carolina. She bought her kid a house and let the child invest their savings as a portion of that so they get a portion of the profit. So, man, that's some real straight line thinking to get a child at that age to think about, I'm saving my, hard-earned allowance and putting it into an investment. It's paying me return. So, Curtis, I want to thank you for being on the show. Really appreciate you sharing your time on the radio show and your time as a consultant and mentor, and really appreciate you being out there being a leader in the group and going places where no one's gone before and sending back maps. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, Dale.
All right, for the rest of you out there, keep this in mind. Curtis doesn't do this just for money, and neither do the rest of us. We're doing this for the same reason you should be doing it, for an incredible lifestyle. That's what it's all about. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
The information and opinions you hear on the Del Walmsley radio show are those of the host, Del Walmsley, his guests, and his callers, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this station, its affiliates, its management, or advertisers. The Del Walmsley show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Del Walmsley show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.